By 11:30 tonight, the whole world will know that Rupert Pupkin is the new king of comedy. Robert De Niro, Jerry Lewis, in a Martin Scorsese picture. The king of comedy.
Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Cam, and welcome to the beginning of Scorsese month through the month of October. In retrospective honor of Killers of the Flower Moon, I'm going to be reviewing 4 Martin Scorsese movies that I have never seen. I did this, and I wanted to do this because I wanted to celebrate Killers of the Flower Moon. I did see it. It was very good. But I also wanted to do it because a lot of the things in the news lately with Scorsese and his thoughts on superhero movies, and I will not rehash that debate here. I wanted to go more into his filmography because I've seen some of his more important ones. I've seen Goodfellas, I've seen Silence, I've seen The Irishman. So I've seen one important one and a couple of his recents, but I've never really ventured forth into some of his more famous movies. So I wanted to do it with this series this month. This is not going to be anything other than just a review series, but it's also going to be a tweak on my I Finally Watched series where I'm going to be reacting to 4 movies that I've never seen before that were directed by one director. One from the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s. I'm going to be having guests on to talk about The Departed and The Wolf of Wall Street later on in the month, and that's going to be a lot of fun. But for right now, this is the beginning, and let us start with 1982's The King of Comedy. This was released in 1982, like I mentioned, and the movie starred Robert De Niro and Jerry Lewis, among others. It tells the story of Rupert Pupkin, played by De Niro. He is an aspiring stand-up comic. He has a lot of ambition, but he has a little talent. Like, the dude, I think I'm funnier than this guy, unironically. But he is bound and determined to become the next Jerry Langford, played by Jerry Lewis. He is basically the Johnny Carson of this world. He hosts the talk show at late night that everybody watches. And so Rupert tries to get into, not into bed, but just to get into the good graces of Jerry Langford. But Langford is initially graceful at first, but then as things start to get creepy, he starts to say, yeah, Rupert, kindly but firmly get away from me. And Rupert takes it about as good as you can anticipate. Of all the movies I picked for Scorsese month, this is the one I knew the least about. And in my research, I found a lot of fascinating little tidbits. Apparently, after the runaway success of Raging Bull, another Scorsese movie I've covered on this channel as part of the AFI project, Scorsese actually contemplated quitting directing. He felt kind of a lack of inner peace and wanted to try and find himself first. Think about that. If Scorsese had quit directing in the early 80s, that would be a completely different world we're living in right there. But, of course, he would make a return at the behest of Robert De Niro, because De Niro wanted to work with Scorsese again. And so the two basically are like this, and so Scorsese ended up coming back to the director's chair. If Scorsese had not directed the movie, though, the movie was supposed to be directed by Bob Fosse, the Broadway legend. He directed All That Jazz, starring Roy Scheider, which is basically an autobiography on Fosse's life, but Fosse is a legend. And he allegedly, he being Fosse, wanted to make the movie a little different. He wanted the Rupert Pupkin role to be played by Andy Kaufman of Taxi, Saturday Night Live, getting pile-driven by Jerry Lawler in the Mid-South Coliseum, that Andy Kaufman, and the Jerry Langford role to be played by Sammy Davis Jr. And in a bit more of a tweak, Sammy Davis Jr.'s character was going to be, instead of a late-night TV host, more of like a televangelist. He would run these 24-hour charity telethons that I guess went on during that time period, kind of similar to what Jerry Lewis would end up doing. How ironic. But Sammy Davis Jr. and Andy Kaufman left the project for one reason or another. And so eventually it fell into Scorsese and he cast De Niro. another bit of a wrinkle for the Jerry Langford role. Among the actors considered included Orson Welles and all of the members of the Rat Pack, including Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin. Dean Martin came the closest, but Martin had to step down and ended up recommending his old comedy partner in Jerry Lewis. And so we ended up getting De Niro and Lewis in the final product. That was a very long tangent. I apologize, but I'm just fascinated by this stuff, man. This was a rabbit hole that I just loved falling down. This movie is often considered one of Scorsese's more overlooked films. It's got De Niro, of course, and it is very well received by critics. However, the movie doesn't really get talked about too much, and so that's why I chose it. Having now seen it, I don't think it's one of Scorsese's best. I have some issues with it, but overall, it is very good. First and foremost, though, and this is a statement that says basically water is wet, Robert De Niro is awesome in the movie. He plays this very obsessed super fan of Jerry Langford. He wants to be a stand-up comedian so bad, but he just sucks at his job. And when Langford basically gives him the gracious answer of start in the comedy clubs, work your way up, get in touch with the right people, and eventually you will get there. That's not the answer that Rupert exactly needs right now. And Rupert, his sanity eventually just starts down the slippery slope and just becomes a coffin on roller skates. You can see in these brilliant show but tell moments where you just know that Rupert just, like, this is the thing that he lives for. It's heavily implied that he lives with his mother, who, by the way, is voiced by Martin Scorsese's mother, Carmine. It's a brief scene, but it is there. You don't see her, but you hear her voice. And yeah, long story short, Rupert Pupkin has nothing else besides this dream of becoming the next Jerry Langford, like, and just not even beating his idol, but surpassing him in every way. The more frustrated he gets, the more frustrated Langford gets, but for different reasons. And speaking of Langford, let's talk about Jerry Langford, played by Jerry Lewis. You get the feeling that Scorsese watched a lot of Johnny Carson in preparation for this, because the Carson-esque fingerprints are all over this performance. Also in my research, among the people considered for the Jerry Langford role, Johnny Carson and Dick Cavett, two legendary late-night TV hosts, were once considered, but they both turned it down. Johnny Carson publicly, Dick Cavett privately. That would be crazy to see Johnny Carson in a role like this, basically lampooning himself to a certain extent. It'd be like when they cast Richard Dawson, the longtime host of Family Feud, as this egotistical, like, game show host in The Running Man, when in reality, Richard Dawson was an egotistical game show host who hosted Family Feud. So, I don't know, it's just really interesting. But we ended up getting Jerry Lewis, and Jerry Lewis did a really good job, predictably. The movie looks the part, walks the part, and talks the part. My main issue comes with some of the story, and let's just say the movie left me with a lot more questions than answers. Specifically, when it comes to the whole, are the events in this movie really happening? Because, long story short, Rupert Pupkin is very much an unreliable narrator. Jerry Langford comes across as a nice enough guy in the beginning, but then slowly gets real frustrated, as you would predict. However, and I'm going to, well, here's your spoiler warning, but basically Rupert kidnaps Jerry Langford with the help of this woman. I'll talk about her in a second. Rupert gets a guest spot on the Jerry Langford show. He does a set, and then he goes to jail. But then as soon as he gets out, he's built up so much fame that he gets a memoir published of himself, and he gets his own show. So he basically got his every dream come true. This ending confused me so much. Among other things, I was asking myself, just like, is this all in Rupert's head? did this actually happen? Because in what reality would this actually happen? I know with social media, it's really crazy. And so something like this, unfortunately, is not too far beyond the pale. But you think that with someone like a Rupert Pupkin who kidnaps a man would be treated a little more harshly, considering the fact that, I don't know, he kidnapped a man, not just any man, but like one of the most famous men in America in this universe. I don't know, that part just really confused me. And to top all of that off, there is this woman, and it is never fully understood like what her role in all of this is. Is she Jerry Langford's lover? Did they have like a child together and Langford's just not doing anything about it, like not paying like alimony or anything? Are they like, I was just asking myself that, and the movie doesn't really explain who this person is. It's implied that they were a thing, but then Langford broke it off because she's not exactly stable up here. I don't know. It's just a thing that just left me with more questions than answers. And let me just say that I am not a confused Matthew. I'm not someone who needs to have my hand held and explain everything that happens. I can follow most movies on my own with my own brain. But this movie just, it walked a fine line between fiction and reality in this world. And I don't think it really did a good job of saying, like, this is very much happening and this is all in Rupert's head or Jerry's head. It's like, it all felt like a dream. And it just, I don't know, it was just a weird choice. But at the end of the day, I am going to give this movie a great rating because, yeah, I do have problems with it, but overall, I cannot complain about literally everything else. Story is a little weird in terms of its execution, but everything else was absolutely spot on. When I first got done watching the movie, I wanted to give it a good rating, but the more I thought about it, the better it got with me, the better I sat with it. So I don't think this is one of Scorsese's best. However, it is still very good and very well done. But I pass it off to all of you. What did you think of The King of Comedy? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to read what you have to say. And stay tuned for next week, where we'll be jumping to the 1990s and talking about 1995's Casino. But if you like this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, click the bell to allow notifications so when a new video drops, you'll be the first to know about it. My name is Ryan Cam, and I'll see you in the next one.